Hello students, welcome to chapter number 4. In this chapter, we are going to focus on the very first step in the HRD framework. Back in the previous chapter, we have introduced the model called the ADDIE model. So we start with assessment, design, implementation, and evaluation. So in this chapter, we are going to get deeper into the details of how do we assess training needs, what are the steps involved, and what are the strategic role of HRD needs. As always, we start with the learning objectives for this chapter. And now we get into what are the goals of HRD. So in order for us to understand what is the placement of HRD needs within the organization, we need to first take a step back and examine what do we intend to achieve by human resource development. So the goals, the purpose of HRD is first of all to solve current problems. To solve current problems. If there's any situation, any deficiency, any particular problem that the organization is facing, HRD is supposed to address that. Secondly, is to prevent anticipated problems. So not only to focus on the short-term objectives, but the longer-term ones. So to anticipate, to predict problems and start working on solving them right now. And then finally, to include as participants those individuals and units that can benefit most. So basically, we say that HRD should involve everyone. All stakeholders must be involved. So the employees, the HR department, supervisors, the management of the company, external parties if needed as well. Now, we re-examine this framework that we introduced last time. So the approach that we are going to take towards HRD is we begin with the assessment of needs, and then we move into design, then implementation, and finally evaluation. So this is an illustration of this framework that we are going to follow throughout our semester. So as you can see, step number 1 on the left hand side is assessment. Then we move on to the next steps in the process. So we now are going to examine a formal definition of needs assessment. Sometimes it's also called needs analysis. So what do we mean by needs assessment? It's how organizations identify their needs. How organizations identify their needs and articulate them. Articulate meaning like to put them in actual words. صياغتها. So needs assessment or needs analysis is the process that HRD uses in order to identify and articulate what the organization needs, what the organization requires, what the organization must do in order to address problems in terms of performance, for example. And of course, the needs assessment is the starting point of all HRD processes. We have just seen the framework or the 4-step model, and of course needs assessment was done at the very beginning of this process. So why do we do a needs assessment? If we do a needs assessment, what can we get? What information is this process going to give us? The needs assessment can identify the goals of the organization and whether or not the organization is effective in achieving these goals. So any organization, small, big, company sector, private sector, all organizations have goals. And the purpose of organizations is always to achieve and attain those goals. So when we do a needs assessment, we are going to first of all know what are the goals of the organization and are we doing a good job in terms of obtaining these goals. And the second thing is that it will give us and indicate to us whether or not there are any differences, whether or not there are any discrepancies between the skills that we need our employees to have and the skills that they actually have. So through the needs assessment process, we can identify whether or not our employees have the skills that we require them to have. And then it will also show us the discrepancies or the differences between the skills that we need for the future and the skills that are available right now. So this is partly a strategic sort of objective. When we say strategic, we mean long term, we mean bigger picture, we mean 10, 15 years from now, for example. So we have to identify our goals for the future and what skills do we require our employees to have so that we as a company can be successful in the future. If we do a needs assessment, we will know what are the skills of our employees that they currently have right now, and then what skills do we need in the future, and what is the gap, what is the difference. And finally, it will also show us the conditions under which the human resource development activity will occur. So not only what activity, what skill, but the condition. Sometimes you will see in job advertisements that you need to work under extreme pressures, or you need to be able to meet urgent deadlines. So these are some of the conditions that we are talking about over here. So it's not only that you can do the job, but it's whether or not you can do the job under these type of conditions. Now, even though the needs assessment is a very important process, we already established how important it is. We have just seen what kind of information we can get if we do a needs assessment. However, if you go to organizations, you will often see that they don't do it. That sometimes it's not conducted. So what are the reasons why the needs assessment is sometimes not conducted? First of all, it is a very difficult process. It's a very difficult and a very time-consuming process. It's kind of complicated, as we have just examined together. You need to examine and you need to look into a lot of things in your organization. You need to focus on the short-term goals, the long-term goals, the objectives, the future, the skills of the employees. So it is very time consuming and it can be quite complicated. So sometimes organizations just say, we're not going to do it. Second thing is that action is valued over research. Unfortunately, organizations sometimes think that doing this kind of research, doing this kind of digging in information is not very important and it's not very practical. That what we need to do is just take an action. Tell me how I can improve my employees. Tell me a step-by-step process, 1, 2, 3, 4. But how can we tell you that this is the best way to motivate your employees or to improve their performance and skills if we do not do some research? We have to do some research in order for us to identify what are the best ways in order to improve your organization overall. And then another reason is that the available information already specifies what an organization, what an organization's needs are. So sometimes you already have job descriptions, you already have operational plans, you already have future objectives of your organization. So because you have all of this already available, some organizations say we do not need to do a needs assessment because everything we need to know is already available to us. And then there is a lack of support sometimes for needs assessment. Support from whom? Of course, support from management and decision makers in the organization. So let's get a little bit more specific here. What is a training need? We have been saying that needs assessment is important. We assess the training needs of the company and of our employees. So a training need is the gap, is the difference, is the deficiency between what is expected and what is happening, between what we actually want things to be and what is actually happening right now. We want our employees to be excellent in communication. But in fact, they are not so good in communication. So that difference between what we want them to be and what they are right now, this is a training need. Now, efforts focused on correcting substandard performance. So when we do training need analysis, we focus our efforts on how can we improve low performance. Substandard means like lower performance. What can we do? What kind of actions and steps can we introduce and take in order for us to improve performance of our employees? And then not every need should be addressed by HRD. There are some type of needs that HRD doesn't have the capacity to interfere with. So if you talk about financial resources, for example, the human resource development has nothing to do with this. This is an entirely separate function. So we dig deeper now into the types of needs, the different types of needs. We have something called diagnostic needs. And when we say diagnostic, this comes from the word diagnosis. If you go to a doctor, he will give you a diagnosis, تشخيص لحالتك المرضية. So in here we are diagnosing your performance. زي الطبيب اللي يشوف ايش مشكلتك، ايش الأعراض اللي عندك، and then ايش الدواء المناسب لك. So in diagnostic needs, we focus on what can we do to improve performance. To improve performance. نشخص حالة البرفورمانس اللي عندك, and then we give you some tips on how can you improve it. And then analytic needs comes from analysis. So in analytic needs, the focus is on what other ways can you perform and introduce to do a better job. So analysis basically is breaking things down. You have a big task, you analyze it, you break it down into smaller parts. So when we are examining analytic needs, we are trying to come up with better ways to do your job, with other alternative ways that are much more effective, much more efficient, much more timely in order for you to perform your job. And then finally, compliance needs. And when we say compliance, automatically you have to think of regulations and laws. So compliance needs, sometimes there are rules and regulations by the Ministry of Labor, وزارة العمل ومكتب العمل يفرض عليك قوانين معينة, and because of this you have to comply. لازم انه انت تستوفي وتقابل هذه الشروط. How? By sometimes offering some training. So in order for you to be compliant with the needs of different parties in your organization, or sometimes outside of your organization, you have to introduce some initiatives. Proactive versus reactive. So should training be proactive or reactive? Proactive means that you are taking the initiative, you are starting the process yourself. Reactive, it means you are only reacting to what is happening, to a change that has happened, and you are just responding to it. So what we are saying over here is that HRD should be, of course, both. What is happening right now is that most organizations are only reactive when it comes to their training. They do not introduce training unless there is a problem. But you have to be a forward thinker. Means you have to think of the future, think strategically, think about 10, 15 years from now. So HRD must be proactive and must be a strategic partner with management and work towards the future. Being reactive, if you are only being reactive, it means you are only focusing on the past and the present. You are not thinking strategically, and therefore sometimes you limit yourself. You are not really improving a lot of things in the organization. You may solve things on the short term, but then other problems will arise in the future. So HRD must be both proactive and reactive. So we just examined the types of needs, and now we are going to examine the levels of needs. So when we say levels of needs, it means that we are going to, like, which which part of the organization are we going to focus on when we do our needs analysis or our needs assessment? So the first level is the big picture level, the organization as a whole, the strategic level analysis. And here, of course, we focus on the organization as a whole, and where exactly in the organization do we require training. So this is what we focus on when we do a strategic level analysis. The second level is when we focus on the task itself. So when we focus on the job itself. So someone who works as a human resources specialist, someone who works as a mechanical engineer or a project engineer, we focus on their jobs. We focus on what do they do. We focus on what do they do from 7 to 4. How do they interact with others? So this is task analysis. What must be done to perform successfully, and what must be done to correctly complete a task. So we focus on the job itself. And then finally, person analysis. This means that we are focusing here on individuals. Who exactly in our organization, in our department needs to be trained? Is it Muhammad or Khalid or Noura or Hissa? So we focus here on the person himself or herself. So in strategic or organizational analysis, we have to examine a number of things. From the name itself, it's organizational analysis. You examine, so it means that you are going to examine these organizational level things like organizational goals, organizational resources, the organizational climate, and also the constraints in your environment, in your business and industry environment. So in strategic or organizational analysis, you have to examine a lot of things on the strategic level, on the bigger picture level, your goals, your objectives, your industry, your environment. When we say environment, we are not saying, we're not just, we don't mean weather. We mean like the industry in which you are operating. المجال اللي الشركة تشتغل فيه، هل هو مجال التعليم أو الصحة أو الصناعة أو النفط أو غيره. So why is the strategic or organizational analysis important? If you get a question why, or explain why this organizational analysis is extremely important, actually, for a number of reasons. Number one, it gives us like how can we ensure that our human resource development is linked, is tied to the organizational mission and vision, strategy, goals, objectives, and so on. So we link our goals, our big picture plans with what we do on a day-to-day basis. That's number one. Number two, it communicates the link between operations and HRD. Between operations in the plant, for example, and what the company does, and also human resource development, because there is always this miscommunication between HRD and what is actually happening in terms of core work processes. الاتش ار في بنك الرياض مثلا ما يعرف بالضبط ايش وظيفه الصرافين، وايش وظيفه حقين خدمه العملاء، وايش وظيفه الناس اللي يشتغلون كمحللين ماليين واقتصاديين في البنك. So when we do this strategic organizational level analysis, we make a connection. That HR now will understand exactly what is happening on the ground, what is happening in the field. And then, of course, this level of analysis will help us generate support for HRD efforts and activities. When we do a strategic level analysis and we get all this type of information, now we can convince the CEO, we can convince the vice president, we can convince the finance people that HRD actually works, that HRD is actually very important, and when you give us the necessary budgets and support, now we will be able to improve the organization in general. So, what do we do then? What do we do in order for us to be involved in strategic analysis? You have to collect data from multiple sources. Some of these sources are already available sometimes in the organization, and sometimes you have to do them from scratch if they are not available. So we talk about things that you have already studied in the previous course, Human Resource Management. So we talk about HR inventories. We talk about skill inventories. We talk about the organizational climate measures and surveys, efficiency indexes. All of those are indicators, are tools, are documents, are things that you prepare in order for you to get a better idea of your organization and of your workforce and HR in general. Resources and time limitations of course make it difficult sometimes to do that level of analysis. And already قلنا انه sometimes companies do not do this needs analysis. Why? We have already talked about some of the reasons. We reiterate here that sometimes because of time limitations, it is very difficult to do all of this. And now we move into the next level, which is the task analysis. قلنا task analysis يركز على الوظيفة نفسها، يركز على المهام الوظيفية نفسها. الشخص اللي يشتغل as a project engineer, what do they do from 7 to 4? الشخص اللي يشتغل ك customer service agent, what does that guy do? Okay? So sometimes task analysis is called operations analysis. ليش يسمى operations analysis؟ لأنه this is what the company does. This is what the core business, the core activities of the organization. So what is it? Task analysis is a systematic collection of data about a specific job or group of job. Why do we do this? Why do we collect this data? So that we can determine what an employee should be taught, in order to achieve optimal, perfect performance. So we collect data. What is the purpose of collecting this data? To determine what should we teach you? What kind of training should we offer you in order for you to deliver perfect and great performance? طيب, now that we know what task analysis is, let's see how is it done. So here are the steps that you must follow if you want to do task analysis. Of course, number one, you have to do a job description. So this is the most relevant resource or source of information that you rely on when you perform or when you are doing a task analysis. Job description. This is how important these job descriptions are. And then of course you have to identify the task. قلنا شخص يشتغل كممثل خدمة عملاء. What is the task that this person is doing? Identify this task. Then describe what should be done in the task. What should be done in a perfect scenario. ايش الشيء المفروض يسويه؟ الخطوات اللي لازم يتبعها الشخص who works as a customer service representative. And then describe what is actually done in the task. الآن في الواقع, in reality, what is actually happening. Then you have to describe what is needed to perform the job. So you have to describe the KSAOs, the knowledge, the skills, the abilities, and other characteristics that any person who performs this job needs and requires in order to be able to perform the job. And then step number 4, you have to identify the areas that can benefit from training. Where exactly? Is it in the knowledge, or is it in the skills, or is it in the abilities? What type of skills? Where exactly in these areas can training be most helpful? And then of course you have to list them in terms of priority. ترتبهم من حسب الأولوية. Is it more important for you? Is it more important for us now in the organization to improve customer service? Or is it more important for us to improve communication skills between employees? So you have to decide and make a decision which is now more important and which ones should we address first. Okay, now here are some important things for you to consider when you are performing or when you are doing a task analysis. So inshallah, when you go for co-op or when you are hired after that, and your manager requires you to perform a task analysis, these are some important considerations and points to keep in mind when you are doing this type of job. You have to collect input from various sources. from the managers, the supervisors, the employees themselves, so your co-workers, the actual employees who are performing the job. So when you are collecting data from multiple sources, you will get, of course, better quality information. Then, of course, you have to use multiple methods. You have to use multiple methods when you are doing a task analysis. We always say that there is no one best approach. You will see later on in the course called organizational behavior that there isn't only in management or in organizations ما نقدر نقول انه في طريقة واحدة هي الطريقة الأمثل والأفضل على الإطلاق. No, this is a wrong attitude and mentality about how management is done. You have to always use multiple methods so that you collect information and data from various angles, from various points of views, so that you can get a better understanding of the situation. In addition, you have to perform some sort of quantitative analysis, because they always say numbers do not lie, and if you want to get support from management, you have to show them numbers. Decision makers in organizations, they always want to see figures. لازم يشوفون أرقام. هذه نسبة رضا العملاء حاليا في الشركة. إذا سوينا التريننج هذا راح ترتفع نسبة الرضا حقت العملاء من 60% إلى 75%. معناته أرباحنا راح تزيد أكثر، سمعتنا راح تصير أفضل، وهكذا. So this is how you convince management when you want them to be involved in decision making. So you have to perform some sort of mathematical or quantitative analysis. Viewing needs from a broad perspective rather than focusing only on performance deficiencies, of course, results in better understanding. معناته هذا الكلام do not only focus on the short term. لا تطالع فقط تحت رجلك بشكل حسب التعبير. Meaning لا تطالع فقط في المدى القصير، وإنما لازم تنظر للمدى البعيد. You have to focus also on the broader perspective. Take a step back and look at things from a higher level, so that you understand how things are connected. So you don't only look at the performance on the job, you look into the performance of the department, you look into the performance of the company, you look into the performance even of the industry as a whole. And now the third level of analysis, which is person analysis. من اسمه person analysis, we focus on people. So in here, we direct our efforts at determining the training needs of individuals, of individual employees. Khalid, Ahmed, Noura, Hissa, this is, now we analyze them in order for us to determine what kind of training do they require, what are their skills, their abilities, and what kind of training should we give them in order for us to improve their performance. Now, the focus generally in person analysis is on how good are they in performing their jobs. نشوف أحمد, how good is Ahmed when as a teacher? How good is Noura as a customer service representative? How good is Saleh as a manager? So this is the focus of our analysis at this level, at the person level. So when we do a person analysis, there are basically two main things that we generate, two main things that we yield when we perform a person analysis. The first thing here is the summary, and the second is the diagnostic part. So the summary analysis involves determining the overall success of individual employee performance. What that means is that from the name itself, you can figure out that this is only a summary. It doesn't give you detailed information. It just tells you about a general idea of how Ahmed is performing, how Khalid is performing, how good are they in terms of performing their jobs. And then the diagnostic level, زي ما أخذنا أول diagnostic needs. Here, what do? قلنا نشخص، نحدد الحالة بالضبط، إيش المشكلة وإيش العلاج. What is the remedy? What is the problem? What is the diagnosis? And also what is the cure and what is the remedy? So in here we try to discover why. Why is he performing that way? ليش خالد ما هو جيد في الكوميونيكيشن؟ ليش نورة ما تعرف تسوي presentations بشكل ممتاز؟ Okay, is it because she didn't get any training? Is it because they do not have support from their supervisors? Is it because the environment is not encouraging and supportive? So this is what is involved in diagnostic person analysis. So the most relevant tool that you should rely on when you are performing a person analysis طبعا راح يكون البرفورمانس appraisal. التقييم تقييم الأداء أو التقييم السنوي أحيانا يسمى. So your performance evaluation. From that performance evaluation and appraisal, you will get excellent information on the person. راح تعرف بالضبط فين نقاط القوة عنده وفين نقاط الضعف, and based on that you can identify the reasons why they are performing lower than required, and also what can be done in order to improve their performance. So you have to have in your organization a complete and accurate performance appraisal process. In the performance appraisal, you have to identify the discrepancies. قلنا discrepancies يعني differences between what is what is required, ايش ال perfect situation, ايش ال perfect performance, and what is actually happening right now. And then you have to identify the source of this difference. فين سبب المشكلة بالضبط؟ احنا نبغاه يكون level الكوميونيكيشن عنده 10 لكن حاليا level الكوميونيكيشن عنده 5 فقط. ليش المشكلة هذه؟ هل كان في غلط أصلا في توظيفه من الأساس؟ ولا هل ما أعطيناه فرصة كافية للتدريب؟ ولا هل ما في ممارسة جيدة؟ ولا هل السوبرفايزر ما يعطي نصائح كافية؟ So this is how important performance appraisals are. And then through the performance appraisal, you can select the interventions appropriate to resolve these discrepancies. Meaning, you can now identify what solutions I can offer this employee so that they can work on this problem of performance of theirs. An interesting tool that you have probably already seen in your human resource management course is called the 360-degree performance appraisal. غالبا البرفورمانس appraisal والتقييم السنوي الشخص المسؤول عنه هو فقط your direct supervisor, your direct manager. بس احنا تونا قلنا في بداية المحاضرة انه you have to consider various angles, صح؟ You have to collect data from different sources, from different people. ممكن السوبرفايزر ما يكون عنده التصور الكافي عنك. So what we do is that we do a 360-degree performance appraisal, meaning the 360 degree by the way is the degree of a circle. هي درجة الدائرة. قياس الدائرة 360 درجة. So we include everyone in this circle when we collect feedback about your performance. So we don't only ask your supervisor, but we ask your colleagues, we ask your teammates, we ask your co-workers, we ask our customers, we ask our suppliers, basically anyone that is affected by your job and anyone that you communicate with while performing your job. أحيانا نكتشف أن السوبرفايزر يقول كلام لكن الكاستمرز يقولون كلام مختلف. نكتشف انه الكاستمرز يقولون شيء لكن زملائك في العمل and your co-workers and colleagues are saying something different about you. So by collecting data from multiple sources, now we can have a better understanding of the situation. We mentioned before that you need to prioritize HRD needs. لازم ترتب احتياجات تطوير الموارد البشرية من حيث الأولوية. ليش؟ احنا عندنا limited resources وعندنا limited time وعندنا limited budgets. So sometimes you cannot do everything you want. يقول لك يا أخي أنا محتاج أسوي 50 برنامج تدريبي لكن you only have time and money to do 4 of them. You have to prioritize. You have to say this training is the most important training that I should give my employees. And then step number 2 and then number 3 and so on. So because of the limited resources, we need to prioritize HRD needs. And for us to make a decision about this, you have to consider your ROI, your return on investment. You have seen probably this term in your financial management courses and in your accounting courses. لما تدخل أي استثمار أي مشروع لازم تحسب العائد من هذا المشروع. العائد. So the return on investment. أنا استثمرت فيك، أنا as an organization استثمرت فيك يا موظف ودفعت لك فلوس عشان تروح للتريننج. أنت إيش راح تقدم لي؟ What are you going to give me back as an organization? So who participates in the prioritization process? مين الأشخاص that we should ask in order for us to make that decision? We have to ask everyone. We have to ask supervisors, we have to ask managers, we have to ask the employees themselves. We as HRD people, as as the human resource department, we should also have a saying in this. So everyone should be involved, and there should be some sort of general agreement on what is most important, what is the most important function to address first. Finally, of course, technology plays an important role in the field of human resource development, and technology has always been the reason why sometimes we have to train our employees. زمان قبل لا تدخل الكمبيوترات اضطرت الشركات انها هي توفر تدريب لموظفينها على كيفية استخدام الكمبيوتر. Nowadays, using computers is considered the basic skill. حتى الشركات ما راح تسأل انت تعرف تستخدم الكمبيوتر ولا لا، لانه يفترضون انه of course you do know how to use a computer. لكن sometimes now, because of new improvements in technology, you have to update your knowledge. كنت تعرف تستعمل مايكروسوفت اوفيس 2010، الان 2016 في خصائص جديده. You have to know how to use these features. لكن let's take a step back and focus on what is the role of technology when we talk about needs assessment. So there are basically two important problems that are there. First of all, sometimes there's a failure in identifying the real problem or the need for e-learning. So when we say e-learning, this is by the way a separate chapter that we will study inshallah in the future. So most organizations nowadays are offering training courses online for their employees. Why are they offering online courses? If you ask the human resource department, why are you offering this online course? They will say because all other companies are doing it. So sometimes there isn't much thinking that has taken place before introducing these types of training interventions. And then there is sometimes failure to fully analyze the problem or need, even when it was identified. So even when we know that this is the problem, this is what we need to do in order to address and resolve this problem, still our efforts sometimes might fail. And the next thing about technology is that technology is supposed to be great because it's helping us reduce time, reduce effort, reduce even the cost that that is involved in training. Technology can help us speed up data gathering and analysis. تخيل لو انت تجي تبغى تسوي strategic level analysis and task level analysis and person analysis، وكل شيء لازم تسويه بالورق، وكل شيء لازم تروح تقابل الاشخاص وجها لوجه. Of course this will take much time. Like imagine everything is done online. You develop a tool like a survey, an online survey, and everyone just answers that survey. Within seconds راح تطلع لك إحصائيات و statistics that you can use in order to perform your job. So this was our chapter which was focusing on needs analysis. Thank you very much for listening. I will see you inshallah on the next chapter.